Impermanent loss experiment number 2. If you'd like to see the video for number 1, I've linked it in the description. For this experiment, I used pool number 619 on Osmosis Zone. Osmosis Zone is a DEX in the Cosmos ecosystem. The pool that I used was composed of DSM tokens and OSMO tokens at a 1-to-1 ratio. If you like educational content, informational content, please subscribe to the channel, and you could also follow me on Twitter. I am at Cosmos DeFi on Twitter. Here's a poll that I ran while the experiment was going on just to get an idea. Only 40 people replied to this, but I did run this poll more than once, and the results are pretty similar for each time I ran the poll. About 45% of people say they completely ignore impermanent loss. Impermanent loss is a risk. That's why I'm doing these experiments, just to see the effect of impermanent loss in different situations. And I did notice that there are still a significant amount of people who completely avoid LPing because of impermanent loss. 10% is significant, even though it's a small sample size, because the last time I ran the poll, it was actually more than 10% who replied this way. Here's a snapshot of day 1. You could see that my liquidity that I provided was $165 US, and the total pool liquidity was about $5 million US. I have a very insignificant portion of this pool. It's also worth noting that this pool was externally incentivized. These rewards accumulate outside of my liquidity, so they're not going to affect the results, but I will talk about them at the end. Here's the 50-50 breakdown of the liquidity that I provided, 82 and change from each. You could see the token prices at the beginning of this experiment were 59 cents for DSM, $8.11 for OSMO. Here's a day 14 snapshot, and you can see that my liquidity definitely increased in value. The pool liquidity increased significantly as well. It was only about $5.5 million, and now it's $7.5 million. That means more people put their liquidity in. This $206 does not include the bonus incentives, which accumulated elsewhere. Let's look at the breakdown. So you could see that now I have 141.7 DSM tokens, less than 10 OSMO tokens. Remember, I had 10.15 OSMO tokens, so that's the impermanent loss. And since my liquidity is $206 US, 103 comes from DSM, 103 comes from OSMO, and that's how impermanent loss happens. The tokens change prices, but the value of my liquidity has to remain in a 1-to-1 ratio. If I was to stake these tokens instead of putting them in a liquidity pool, I would realize the individual price appreciation for each token, right? DSM increased by about 20%, OSMO increased by about 27%. I would have ended up with this amount plus my staking rewards, which would have been a couple of bucks, right? Probably like $2, something like that. And you could see the 206 was from supplying liquidity. Very, very, very close. And here are the more detailed results. I won't talk about this, but you can pause the video to take a look at yourself. But the takeaway here is rather than realize the individual price increases, I realized a 25% gain overall. And just some impermanent loss takeaways. It's a little different than my previous experiment. In this experiment, LPing produced better results than staking and didn't calculate the staking rewards, but I also didn't calculate the external incentives, which ended up being like $3 or $4. So that's significant. That's about 2%. So let's say they offset. LPing was slightly better than staking in this experiment. Another takeaway, when token prices move in tandem, either up or down, the result seems to be more profits than staking individually. This takeaway also factors in my previous experiment where my tokens prices got slaughtered in the time I did the experiment, but I actually didn't lose that much money. And finally, impermanent loss could be negligible even with volatility, right? I would consider a 20% price increase and a 27% price increase volatile. My impermanent loss was negligible. I lost like 0.15 OSMO tokens, and I gained 2 point something DSM tokens. And for me, this is negligible. And it's negligible because I only did this for 14 days. Ordinarily, I would not supply liquidity into a pool for less than several months, right? If I'm going to lock up my liquidity, I want to make sure that I don't need it for a long time. Anyway, hopefully you like this video. I appreciate it if you could like the video, share it. And again, if you want to follow me on my socials, I'm Cosmos DeFi on Twitter and also Gmail and YouTube. Thank you.